strange moment while listening to English where you understood everything instantly, but then a second later, your brain tried to translate it into your language anyway?
Oh, yes, and somehow the translation makes it slower.
Exactly. And that is the problem so many English learners face. They think real fluency means knowing more grammar, memorizing more vocabulary, or studying more rules. But the truth is much deeper than that.
Because the real battle is happening inside your head.
Right. Most people listen to English, hear a sentence, translate it into their language, understand it, and then translate their answer back into English before speaking.
Which sounds exhausting already.
It is exhausting, and it is also the biggest reason why you feel slow, nervous, and stuck when speaking English. Because while you are translating, real conversations keep moving.
And then you miss the next sentence, and the next one, and suddenly you are completely lost.
Exactly. But here is the surprising part. You do not actually need to think in your language forever. Your brain can learn to understand English directly.
Directly? Without translating every word?
Yes. Just like when you hear the word coffee, you do not stop and imagine a dictionary definition, you instantly picture the drink.
Wow, so fluency is not about translating faster, it's about not translating at all.
That is the secret. And in today's episode, we are going to explore whether it is really possible to understand English without thinking in your language, why your brain keeps translating even when you don't want it to, and most importantly, how you can train yourself to think directly in English.
And if you've ever felt frustrated because you know a lot of English but still can't speak quickly, this episode might completely change the way you learn.
Because sometimes the problem isn't your English level. Sometimes the problem is the habit of translation.
And honestly, that habit can feel impossible to break.
It can. But by the end of this episode, you are going to see that it is not impossible at all. In fact, your brain already has the ability to do it.
I think a lot of viewers will be surprised by that.
Definitely. And before we continue, take a second and think about your own experience. When you hear English, do you translate every sentence in your head? Or are there some words and phrases you already understand instantly?
That's such a good question, because maybe you already understand more directly than you realize.
Exactly. And if you do, comment below and tell us which English words you no longer translate. Maybe words like hello, thank you, good morning, or I love you.
Those are interesting because most people don't translate them anymore. They just understand them automatically.
Which means your brain is already starting to think in English in small ways.
And that also means fluency is not some magical talent only a few people have.
Not at all. It's a process. And the first step is understanding why translation feels so natural in the beginning.
Because once you understand that, you can finally start breaking free from it.
And what you are about to hear next may explain why you still struggle, even after years of studying English.
Have you ever had this strange moment while listening to English where you understood everything instantly, but then a second later your brain tried to translate it into your language anyway?
Oh, yes, and somehow the translation makes it slower.
Exactly, and that is the problem so many English learners face. They think real fluency means knowing more grammar, memorizing more vocabulary, or studying more rules. But the truth is much deeper than that.
Because the real battle is happening inside your head.
Right. Most people listen to English, hear a sentence, translate it into their language, understand it, and then translate their answer back into English before speaking.
Which sounds exhausting already.
It is exhausting, and it is also the biggest reason why you feel slow, nervous, and stuck when speaking English. Because while you are translating, real conversations keep moving.
And then you miss the next sentence, and the next one, and suddenly you are completely lost.
Exactly. But here is the surprising part. You do not actually need to think in your language forever. Your brain can learn to understand English directly.
Directly? Without translating every word?
Yes. Just like when you hear the word coffee, you do not stop and imagine a dictionary definition. You instantly picture the drink.
Wow, so fluency is not about translating faster. It's about not translating at all.
That is the secret. And in today's episode, we are going to explore whether it is really possible to understand English without thinking in your language, why your brain keeps translating even when you don't want it to, and most importantly, how you can train yourself to think directly in English.
And if you have ever felt frustrated because you know a lot of English but still can't speak quickly, this episode might completely change the way you learn.
Because sometimes the problem is not your English level. Sometimes the problem is the habit of translation.
And honestly, that habit can feel impossible to break.
It can, but by the end of this episode, you are going to see that it is not impossible at all. In fact, your brain already has the ability to do it.
I think a lot of viewers will be surprised by that.
Definitely. And before we continue, take a second and think about your own experience. When you hear English, do you translate every sentence in your head, or are there some words and phrases you already understand instantly?
That's such a good question, because maybe you already understand more directly than you realize.
Exactly. And if you do, comment below and tell us which English words you no longer translate. Maybe words like hello, thank you, good morning, or I love you.
Those are interesting because most people don't translate them anymore. They just understand them automatically. Which means your brain is already starting to think in English in small ways. And that also means fluency is not some magical talent only a few people have. Not at all. It's a process. And the first step is understanding why translation feels so natural in the beginning. Because once you understand that, you can finally start breaking free from it. And what you are about to hear next may explain why you still struggle, even after years of studying English.
One of the biggest signs that you are starting to think in English is actually very simple. You stop translating the easiest words.
Like what?
Words like water, phone, friend, car, happy, hungry, or sleepy.
That is true. Most learners do not translate those anymore.
Exactly. They hear the word car and instantly imagine a car. They do not think of the translation first.
So if you already do that, you are already thinking in English a little bit.
Yes, and that is important because a lot of people think thinking in English is some huge dramatic change.
Like suddenly one day your whole brain becomes English overnight.
Right, but it usually does not happen like that. It happens in small pieces.
First a few words, then a few phrases, then whole sentences.
Exactly. And over time, those small pieces become bigger and bigger.
What are some other signs?
Here's a really interesting one. You start understanding the feeling of a sentence, even if you don't understand every single word.
Oh, wow. That happens to me sometimes when I watch movies.
Exactly. Imagine someone says, "I can't believe you did that."
Even if you don't know every word, you can feel the emotion.
Right. You can hear surprise, disappointment, anger, or excitement in the voice.
So your brain understands the message without needing a perfect translation.
Exactly. And that is a huge step towards fluency, because real conversations move too quickly for perfect word-by-word translation.
In real life, you often understand the general meaning first.
Yes, and then maybe the details become clear later.
That is interesting because a lot of learners panic if they don't understand every single word.
They do. But native speakers don't even understand every single word all the time.
Really?
Of course. Think about when someone speaks very fast, uses slang, or talks about a topic you don't know much about.
That's true. Even in your own language, you sometimes miss things.
Exactly. But you still understand enough to continue the conversation.
So maybe fluency is not about understanding 100% of everything.
It is not. Fluency is about staying calm, understanding enough, and continuing anyway.
That takes a lot of pressure away.
It does, because many learners stop listening the moment they hear one unknown word.
And then they miss the rest of the sentence too.
Exactly. Imagine someone says, "Yesterday I went to a restaurant downtown and the atmosphere was amazing."
Maybe you don't know the word atmosphere.
Right. But if you stop and panic, you miss everything after that. A better approach is to keep listening.
Because maybe you can still understand the main idea.
Exactly. Restaurant, downtown, amazing. You already know enough to understand that the person had a good experience.
That is such an important skill.
It really is. And here's another sign you are starting to think in English. You begin using English filler words naturally.
Like, well, actually, you know, or let me think.
Exactly. Those small words are powerful because they give your brain time to keep speaking in English without switching back to your own language.
That is so true. If you say, well, or let me think, you create a little space.
Right. And during that space, you can stay inside the English conversation.
Instead of mentally running back to your native language for help.
Exactly. Think about this. If someone asks you, "What did you do last weekend?" and you immediately panic, your brain often goes back to your language.
But if you say, well, last weekend was pretty busy, you give yourself time.
Exactly. And suddenly the conversation becomes easier.
That is such a useful trick.
It is. And here's another sign. You start dreaming in English.
That's always such a funny experience.
It is. The first time it happens, people get so excited.
Because it feels like proof that English is entering your brain in a deeper way.
Exactly. And even if the dream only has one English sentence, it still matters.
Because it means your mind is processing English automatically.
Right. Another sign is when you start reacting emotionally in English.
What do you mean?
Imagine you accidentally drop your phone and immediately say, "Oh no."
Without translating first?
Exactly. Or you hear good news and say, "That is amazing."
Those reactions happen so fast that there's no time to translate.
Right. Emotional language is often one of the first areas where people stop translating.
Because emotions are fast.
Exactly. Think about words like wow, really, seriously, awesome, or ouch.
Most people don't translate those.
Right. They just feel them.
So maybe one of the best ways to think in English is to connect English to emotions.
That is a fantastic point. Emotions are powerful because they make language feel real.
Which is why people often remember phrases from arguments, funny moments, or exciting experiences.
Exactly. Let me tell you a story. I once met a woman who said she could never remember English vocabulary.
I think so many viewers can relate to that.
Definitely. But then she told me something interesting. She remembered every English phrase her favorite actor said in movies.
That's funny.
She could repeat full sentences perfectly because those moments had emotional meaning for her.
So the problem was not her memory.
Exactly. The problem was that boring vocabulary lists had no emotional connection.
But movie scenes did.
Right. That is why learning English through stories, movies, music, and real conversations is often more effective than memorizing isolated words.
Because your brain remembers meaning, emotion, and context.
Exactly. And here's another important sign you are thinking in English. You stop translating short common expressions.
Like, what's going on, or see you later.
Exactly. You understand those expressions as complete ideas.
Not as separate words.
Right. And that is important because real English is full of chunks.
Chunks?
Small groups of words that people use together all the time.
Like, at the end of the day, to be honest, I don't know, or it depends.
Exactly. Native speakers don't build every sentence from zero. They use chunks.
That makes speaking much faster.
It does. And if you want to think in English, learning chunks is one of the fastest ways to do it.
Because you don't have to think about every word individually.
Exactly. You hear the whole chunk as one meaning.
That sounds so much easier.
It is. For example, if someone says, "By the way," you don't need to analyze each word.
You just know that new information is coming.
Exactly. Or if someone says, "I have no idea," you instantly understand confusion.
Those phrases become like shortcuts in your brain.
That is a perfect way to describe it. And the more shortcuts you build, the more naturally you can think in English.
I think this is something viewers should really pay attention to.
Definitely. Because sometimes people think they need thousands of new words to become fluent.
But maybe they need more chunks instead.
Exactly. A few hundred useful chunks can make a massive difference in how quickly you understand and speak.
And I think that's encouraging because it feels more possible.
It really does. And here's a question for everyone watching. What is one English phrase you understand instantly without translating?
Maybe something like, I'm sorry, no problem, or take care.
Comment below and share your phrase. You might be surprised how many English expressions you already know automatically.
And that can be a huge confidence boost.
Exactly. Because the more you notice your progress, the more motivated you become.
And motivation matters so much when learning a language.
It really does. Because when you believe progress is possible, you start paying attention to small victories.
And those small victories eventually become real fluency.
Exactly. But there is still one big question left.
What is it?
If thinking in English is possible, why do so many people still feel stuck in translation mode for years?
That is a good question.
And the answer has a lot to do with fear, perfectionism, and the way people study English every day.
One of the biggest reasons people stay stuck in translation mode is fear.
Fear of making mistakes?
Exactly. A lot of learners are so afraid of saying something wrong that they do not trust their own understanding.
So, even if they understand an English sentence directly, they still translate it just to make sure.
Right. They want 100% certainty before they speak.
But real conversations do not give you that kind of time.
Exactly. Imagine someone asks you, "Are you free tomorrow?"
If you stop to translate every word, check the grammar, and build the perfect answer, the conversation becomes awkward.
Right. But if you trust your first instinct and simply say, "Yes, I think so," or "No, I'm busy tomorrow," the conversation flows naturally.
So sometimes fluency is really about trusting yourself.
It is, and that can be difficult because school often teaches us the opposite.
That is true. In school, you are rewarded for perfect answers.
Exactly. You learn that mistakes are bad, wrong answers are embarrassing, and grammar must always be perfect.
But real communication is different.
Very different. Native speakers make mistakes all the time. They forget words, they repeat themselves, they change sentences in the middle, and sometimes they say things that are not grammatically perfect.
That is so true. People do not speak like textbooks.
Exactly. Real conversation is messy, and once you accept that, it becomes much easier to think in English.
Because you stop trying to be perfect.
Right. Perfectionism is one of the biggest enemies of fluency.
Because if you wait for the perfect sentence, you often say nothing.
Exactly. And silence can become a habit too.
Wow, I never thought about that.
Think about how many times you wanted to speak English, but stayed quiet because you were afraid.
Probably more times than most people realize.
And every time you stay quiet, you miss a chance to train your brain.
So even imperfect speaking is better than no speaking.
Absolutely. Let me tell you a story. I once worked with a student who was incredibly smart.
The kind of student who knows every grammar rule?
Exactly. She could explain advanced grammar better than most teachers. But when she had to speak, she froze.
Because she was afraid of making mistakes.
Right. She wanted every sentence to be perfect before she said it. And because of that, her speaking was slow, stressful, and unnatural.
That sounds exhausting.
It was. One day, I gave her a challenge. I told her, for the next week, I want you to speak English badly.
Badly?
Yes. I told her not to worry about perfect grammar, perfect pronunciation, or perfect vocabulary.
That must have felt strange for her.
Very strange. But something amazing happened. She started speaking more. She started laughing more. She stopped freezing every time she forgot a word.
Because she was no longer trying to sound perfect.
Exactly. And once she relaxed, her English actually improved faster.
That is so interesting.
It is. Because fear creates tension, and tension blocks natural thinking.
So if you want to think in English, you have to create a calm environment in your mind.
Exactly. And here's another problem. Many people spend too much time studying English in ways that force translation.
Like memorizing bilingual vocabulary lists?
Right. Or reading English sentences with translations directly underneath.
Or using subtitles in their own language all the time.
Exactly. Those habits are understandable, especially in the beginning. But if you rely on them forever, your brain never learns to stay in English.
Because your brain knows it can always go back to your own language.
Right. Think about subtitles. If you always watch English movies with subtitles in your own language, what are you really reading?
Your own language.
Exactly. Your eyes are focused on the subtitles, not on the English sounds.
So even though you think you are practicing English, you are still translating.
Right. A much better step is to use English subtitles instead.
Because then you connect English sounds to English words.
Exactly. And eventually, if you can, try watching without subtitles for short periods.
Even if it feels difficult at first.
Especially if it feels difficult, because difficulty often means growth.
That is such an important idea.
Let me give you another example. Imagine you are learning the word beach.
Most people would look for the translation immediately.
Right. But a stronger way to learn is to picture the beach in your mind.
Sand, waves, the ocean, the sun. Exactly. Maybe you even remember a real beach you visited. That creates a much stronger memory. It does.
And that's because your brain loves images.
More than translations?
Much more. In fact, many memory experts say that pictures are easier for the brain to remember than words.
Which means if you connect English to images, you can think faster.
Exactly. That's why children's books are so powerful for English learners.
Because they use pictures.
Right. You see the image and the English word together without needing a translation.
That sounds simple, but really smart.
It is, and it works for adults too. You are never too old to learn language visually.
I think a lot of people forget that.
They do. Sometimes adults make learning too complicated. They think they need advanced grammar books, long vocabulary lists, and difficult exercises.
When maybe they just need more simple, natural input.
Exactly. Stories, pictures, conversations, podcasts, videos, and repetition.
Repetition is so important.
It really is, because thinking in English is not one big decision. It's a habit.
And habits are built through repetition.
Right. Think about how many times you have heard the phrase, "How are you?"
Probably thousands.
Exactly. That's why you understand it instantly now. Not because you studied it once, but because you heard it again and again and again.
So if you want to think in English, you need more repeated exposure.
Exactly. Repeated exposure to the same phrases, the same sentence patterns, the same kinds of conversations.
That is interesting, because a lot of learners always want new vocabulary.
Right. They think more words equal more fluency.
But sometimes repeating the basic words is more important.
Exactly. Because fluency is not just about knowing words. It's about being able to use them automatically.
That makes so much sense.
Let me ask you something.
Have you ever studied a word many times but still forgotten it in conversation?
Definitely.
That's because recognition and automatic use are different skills.
You might recognize the word on paper, but not use it fast enough in real life.
Exactly. And that's where repetition helps. The more times you hear and use a word in different situations, the faster it becomes automatic.
So instead of learning 100 new words today, maybe it's better to use 10 useful words many times.
Exactly. Imagine you learn the word tired. You can create many simple sentences with it.
I'm tired, you look tired, I was tired yesterday, I'm too tired to work.
Exactly. And each sentence strengthens your connection to the word.
That feels much more useful than memorizing random vocabulary.
It is, because real language is built through use, not just study.
I think that's something many viewers need to hear.
Definitely, because sometimes people spend years collecting vocabulary they never actually use.
Like storing tools in a garage but never building anything.
That's a great example. Words are tools. If you never use them, they stay weak in your memory.
So if you want to stop translating, you need to use English more actively.
Exactly. Speak it, write it, think it, listen to it, read it, repeat it.
Even if it feels uncomfortable at first.
Especially if it feels uncomfortable, because your brain grows when you challenge it.
And that challenge can eventually become natural.
Exactly. But there's one more thing that keeps people stuck in translation mode.
What is it?
They believe they need to know every word before they can think in English.
And that belief can stop them before they even start.
Exactly. Because the truth is, you don't need perfect vocabulary to think in English.
You just need enough words to express simple ideas.
Right. And in the next part, we're going to talk about how you can train yourself to think in English every day, even if your vocabulary is still small.
And some of these techniques are so simple that you can start using them today.
One of the best ways to start thinking in English is to begin with your daily life.
Because your daily life is full of simple things you already know.
Exactly. You do not need advanced vocabulary to think in English. You just need to describe what is happening around you.
Like looking around your room and saying simple things?
Right. You can say, the window is open. My phone is on the table. I need some water. I'm feeling tired today.
That sounds so simple, but I can imagine it being really powerful.
It is powerful because it teaches your brain to connect English directly to your real life.
Instead of treating English like something that only exists in a textbook.
Exactly. A lot of people only use English during study time.
Which means English feels separate from their real world.
Right. But when you start using English during normal moments, it becomes part of your everyday thinking.
So even something simple like, I'm making coffee can help.
Absolutely. Imagine you wake up in the morning and say small English sentences in your head.
I'm tired. I need breakfast. I have to go to work. It's cold today.
Exactly. Those little thoughts may seem unimportant, but they are training your brain.
Because you are staying inside English for longer periods.
Right. And over time, those moments become easier and more automatic.
I think a lot of people believe they need to think about big, complicated topics in English.
They do, but that usually creates stress. Start with easy things.
Because easy things happen every day.
Exactly. Let me give you an example. Imagine you are walking outside.
You could think, there are a lot of people here. That car is really loud. The weather is nice today.
Exactly. Or maybe you are cooking dinner.
The rice is ready. This smells good. I need more salt.
Right. Those are real thoughts that connect directly to real experiences.
And because they are real, they are easier to remember.
Exactly. Here is another technique that works very well. Narrate your actions in English.
Narrate your actions?
Yes. Pretend you are the voice in a movie describing what you are doing.
That sounds kind of funny.
It does, but it is extremely effective. For example, if you are cleaning your room, you can say, first I'm making the bed. Now I'm putting my clothes away. Next, I'm cleaning the desk.
So you're turning ordinary activities into English practice.
Exactly. And the great thing is that you do not need another person to do this.
You can practice alone.
Right. And when you practice alone, there is no pressure.
Which means you can relax and focus on building the habit.
Exactly. Another really powerful technique is asking yourself questions in English.
Like what?
Simple questions. What am I doing today? What do I want to eat? Why am I tired? What should I do this weekend?
And then answer the questions in English too.
Exactly. Even if your answers are short.
I want pizza. I'm tired because I slept late. This weekend I want to relax.
Right. The goal is not to sound perfect. The goal is to train your mind to stay in English.
That is such an important difference.
It really is, because a lot of learners think they need advanced sentences before they can think in English.
But simple sentences are enough to start.
More than enough. In fact, simple English is often the best English.
That is true. Even native speakers use short sentences all the time.
Exactly. Think about how often people say things like, I'm hungry, I'm busy, I don't know, that's fine, or I'm ready.
Those are all short and simple.
Right, but they are incredibly useful.
So maybe fluency is not about using difficult words.
It is not. Fluency is about using simple words quickly and naturally.
That is such a big mindset shift.
It really is. Let me tell you about another method that can help a lot. Talk to yourself in English.
Some people might think that sounds strange.
Maybe a little, but honestly, it works.
And if you are alone, nobody even needs to know.
Exactly. You can describe your plans, talk about your day, or even tell yourself a story.
Like, today was really busy. I woke up late, then I had breakfast, then I went to work.
Exactly. And if you do not know a word, do not stop.
That is important.
Very important. If you do not know a word, explain it with easier English.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine you do not know the word umbrella.
Instead of stopping, you could say, it's the thing you use when it rains.
Exactly. That is a huge skill because it keeps you inside English.
Instead of immediately jumping back to your own language.
Right. Native speakers do this too. Sometimes they forget a word and explain it another way.
That is true. Everyone does that sometimes.
Exactly. So forgetting a word is not failure.
It is just part of communication.
Right. And here is another powerful habit. Try setting small English moments during your day.
What do you mean?
Maybe for 5 minutes in the morning, you only think in English.
That feels possible.
Or maybe during your walk, during lunch, or before bed.
So instead of trying to think in English all day immediately, you build the habit slowly.
Exactly. Because if you try to do too much too quickly, you may feel overwhelmed.
And then you give up.
Right. But if you start with small moments, you can build confidence.
5 minutes becomes 10 minutes. 10 minutes becomes 20.
Exactly. And one day, you may suddenly realize that you have been thinking in English without even noticing.
That must be such a great feeling.
It is. Let me tell you a quick story. I once knew a man who wanted to improve his English speaking, but he had nobody to practice with.
That is a very common problem.
Definitely. So he created a simple habit. Every night before bed, he spent 10 minutes talking to himself in English about his day.
Just 10 minutes?
Yes. At first, it was difficult. He spoke very slowly, he forgot words, he repeated the same phrases again and again.
That sounds normal.
Exactly. But after a few months, something changed. He noticed that English sentences started appearing in his mind during the day.
Without trying?
Without trying. He would look at the weather and think, it's going to rain. He would feel hungry and think, I need to eat something.
That is amazing.
It is, because it shows that thinking in English grows little by little.
Not in one big moment.
Right. Another great technique is to keep a small journal in English.
That is such a good idea.
Every day, write a few simple sentences.
Like, today I felt tired. I had a lot of work. I watched a movie.
Exactly. Writing helps because it slows down your thinking.
Which gives you more time to build English sentences.
Right. And over time, the sentence patterns become more natural.
I think people often underestimate how powerful writing can be.
Definitely. Because writing gives you a chance to organize your thoughts in English without pressure.
And once those thoughts become easier in writing, they often become easier in speaking too.
Exactly. Another useful trick is changing small things in your environment into English. Like what? Change your phone language to English.
That can be hard at first. It can.
But it helps because you start seeing English words every day.
Words like settings, messages, battery, or camera.
Exactly. You can also put small English labels on objects in your house.
Like door, mirror, desk, or fridge.
Right. These little changes surround you with English naturally.
And the more often you see something, the easier it is to remember.
Exactly. Repetition again.
Repetition really is everywhere in language learning.
It is, because your brain learns through repeated contact.
Not through one perfect study session.
Exactly. And here is something very important. Do not wait until you feel ready to think in English.
Because you may never feel completely ready.
Right. Most people wait for some magical moment when they know enough vocabulary, enough grammar, enough pronunciation.
But that moment never really comes.
Exactly. You become ready by starting before you feel ready.
That is true for so many things in life.
It really is. Confidence does not come first. Action comes first.
And then confidence grows from the action.
Exactly. So if you are watching right now, do not wait. Start today.
Even if your English is basic.
Especially if your English is basic. Because basic English can still help you build the habit of direct thinking.
And once that habit starts growing, everything else becomes easier.
Exactly. Vocabulary becomes easier, listening becomes easier, speaking becomes easier.
Because your brain is no longer stopping to translate every single thing.
Right. And in the next part, we are going to talk about real-life situations where translation can disappear completely.
And some of those situations may surprise you because they happen when you least expect them.
One of the most surprising moments in language learning happens when you suddenly realize you understood something in English without even trying. That feeling is amazing.
It really is. Maybe you are watching a movie and a character says something funny.
And you laugh immediately.
Exactly. You do not stop to translate the sentence, you just understand the joke.
That is such a strange feeling at first.
Because it happens so quickly, your brain reacts before translation even has a chance to appear.
And I think those moments are important because they show you that your brain already knows more English than you think.
Absolutely. Let me give you another example. Imagine you are listening to an English song.
Suddenly you hear one line and instantly understand it.
Right. Maybe the singer says, "I miss you," or "I can't let you go."
And you feel the emotion immediately.
Exactly. Music is powerful because emotions move faster than translation.
That is so true. Sometimes you can understand the feeling of a song even if you don't know every word.
Right. And that's because your brain is connecting directly to the emotion, the tone, and the message.
Which means you're already processing English naturally.
Exactly. Another place where translation often disappears is during emergencies or moments of strong emotion.
Because there's no time to translate.
Right. Imagine someone suddenly shouts, "Run."
You don't stop and think about the translation.
Exactly. Your body reacts immediately.
Or if someone says, "Be careful."
Right. You instantly understand the meaning because the situation is urgent.
That is really interesting.
It is. Strong emotions often force the brain to stop translating because speed becomes more important.
Which is probably why people remember English phrases from exciting moments so well.
Exactly. Think about phrases like hurry up, watch out, come here, or stop.
Those are phrases people often understand instantly.
Right, because they are connected to action and emotion.
I think another situation is gaming.
Absolutely. Video games are one of the best examples.
Because when you're playing, you don't have time to stop and translate every word.
Exactly. If the game says find the key, open the door, or enemy approaching, you react immediately.
Because you're focused on the game, not on studying English.
Right. And that's one reason games can be such a powerful way to learn.
Because they force direct understanding.
Exactly. The same thing can happen with sports.
Like when a coach says, pass the ball or move faster.
Right. In those moments, action matters more than grammar.
Which means the brain learns faster.
Exactly. Here's another surprising example. Sometimes translation disappears when you are tired.
Really?
Yes, because translation takes energy. When your brain is tired, it often stops trying to translate every little thing.
That is funny.
It is. You may notice that late at night, after hours of listening to English, you suddenly stop translating as much.
Because your brain is too tired to do all that extra work.
Exactly. And sometimes that's when English starts feeling more natural.
That is such an interesting idea.
It really is. And here's something else people don't always notice. Translation often disappears when you are deeply interested in something.
Like when you're watching a video about your favorite hobby.
Exactly. If you love cooking, sports, travel, movies, fashion, business, technology, or fitness, you may understand English more easily in those topics.
Because you already know the context.
Right. Your brain already understands the situation, so it doesn't need to translate every word.
That is so true. When people talk about something they love, they often become more fluent.
Exactly. Passion creates focus, and focus helps the brain stay in English.
So maybe one of the best ways to improve is to spend more time with English content you actually enjoy.
Absolutely. If you force yourself to study boring material all the time, your brain loses interest.
And when your brain loses interest, it starts looking for the easiest way out.
Right. Usually that means going back to translation.
But if you're interested, you stay engaged longer.
Exactly. Let me tell you a story. I once knew a man who struggled with English for years.
What changed?
He loved football. Every day he watched interviews, match highlights, and football podcasts in English.
Because he was interested.
Right. At first he only understood a little, but because he loved the topic, he kept listening.
And over time, he started understanding more and more.
Exactly. One day he realized he was understanding full interviews without translating.
Wow.
And the reason was simple. He had heard the same football vocabulary so many times that it became automatic.
Words like goal, match, team, score, win, lose.
Exactly. And then those automatic words slowly expanded into bigger ideas and full sentences.
That is really encouraging.
It is, because it means you don't need to understand everything immediately.
You just need enough interest to keep going.
Exactly. Here's another moment when translation disappears, when you spend enough time around English every day.
Like immersion.
Right. Imagine you spend several hours listening to English podcasts, videos, music, or conversations.
After a while, your brain starts adjusting.
Exactly.
At first it feels difficult, but after some time, English starts feeling more natural.
Almost like your brain switches into English mode.
That's exactly what happens. And when your brain enters English mode, translation becomes less necessary.
That sounds amazing.
It is, but it only happens if you spend enough time with the language.
So a few minutes once a week is probably not enough.
Right. Consistency matters more than intensity.
That is such an important lesson.
It really is. 10 minutes every day is often better than 3 hours once a month.
Because your brain needs regular contact with English.
Exactly. Think of it like exercise.
If you go to the gym once every 2 months, you won't get strong.
Right. But if you do a little every day, your body changes.
And language works the same way.
Exactly. Your brain...
One of the biggest myths about fluency is the idea that fluent people never translate in their minds.
But that is not actually true, right?
Not at all. Even advanced English speakers sometimes translate.
Really?
Of course, especially when they hear a difficult word, a strange expression, or a topic they are not familiar with.
So translation is not the enemy.
Exactly. The real problem is when translation becomes your only way of understanding.
That makes sense.
Think about it like this. Translation is like using a flashlight.
A flashlight?
Yes, if the room is dark, the flashlight helps you see. But once the sun comes up, you do not need the flashlight all the time.
That is such a good example.
Translation can help you in the beginning or when you meet something new. But over time, you want to rely more on direct understanding.
So if translation still happens sometimes, that is normal.
Completely normal. The goal is not perfection. The goal is speed, confidence, and comfort.
I think that's important because some learners become frustrated when they still translate occasionally.
They do. They think, oh no, I translated that word. I must not be improving.
When actually it's just part of the process.
Exactly. Imagine you hear a very advanced English sentence about politics, science, or business.
You might still translate a few difficult words.
Right, but that does not mean you are not fluent. It just means you're human.
That takes a lot of pressure away.
It does, because language learning is not about becoming a robot. It's about becoming comfortable.
And comfort takes time.
Exactly. Let me tell you something interesting. Fluent people often don't translate whole sentences anymore.
They only translate small parts when necessary.
Right. Maybe they hear one unfamiliar word and quickly connect it to their language.
But the rest of the sentence stays in English.
Exactly. That's a huge difference. Beginners often translate everything. Advanced learners usually only translate when absolutely necessary.
That sounds much more manageable.
It is. And here's another important point. When translation happens, do not panic.
Because panic makes everything worse.
Exactly. Imagine you are listening to someone speak English and suddenly you hear one unknown word.
A lot of people stop listening immediately.
Right. They panic, focus on the unknown word, and miss the rest of the conversation.
But maybe they could still understand the general meaning.
Exactly. So a better approach is to keep listening.
Even if you don't understand every single word.
Right. Maybe the next sentence will help you understand. Maybe the situation will make the meaning clear.
Or maybe the unknown word is not even important.
Exactly. Native speakers ignore unknown words all the time.
That is true.
Think about when someone uses a very technical word in your own language.
You might not know the exact meaning, but you still understand the main idea.
Exactly. And you continue listening without panic.
So English should be the same.
Right. Here's another useful strategy. If you notice yourself translating too much, try focusing on images instead of words.
Can you explain that?
Sure. Imagine someone says, the little boy was running through the park with his dog.
Instead of translating every word, you imagine the scene.
Exactly. You picture the boy, the park, and the dog.
That sounds much faster.
It is, because your brain understands images more naturally than long translations.
So stories can really help with that.
Absolutely. Stories are powerful because they create pictures in your mind.
Which means you understand meaning directly.
Exactly. That's why reading simple stories in English can be such a great way to train your brain.
Because you start imagining instead of translating.
Right. Another trick is to ask yourself, do I really need to translate this?
That is a good question.
Imagine someone says, I'm exhausted.
Maybe you don't know the exact translation.
Right. But if the person looks tired, sounds tired, and says they worked all day, you can probably understand the meaning.
So maybe you don't need the translation at all.
Exactly. Sometimes we translate out of habit, not because we truly need to.
That is such an important point.
It really is, because if you always depend on translation, your brain never learns to trust context.
And context is such a big part of language.
Exactly. Context helps you understand even when your vocabulary is not perfect.
Let me ask you something. What if someone feels like they translate because they are too slow?
Then they should focus on listening to easier English.
Easier English?
Yes. If the English is too difficult, your brain becomes overwhelmed and automatically goes back to translation.
So it's better to listen to content that is slightly below your level.
Exactly. Content where you understand most of the words already.
Because then your brain has more space to stay in English.
Right. Imagine trying to read a very advanced scientific article when you are still learning basic English.
That would be frustrating.
Exactly. But if you read a simple story or watch a simple video, your brain feels more relaxed.
And relaxed brains learn faster.
Exactly. That's why graded readers, beginner podcasts, and simple videos can be so useful.
Because they help you build confidence.
Right. And confidence is incredibly important.
Because when you believe you can understand, you stop translating so much.
Exactly. Confidence helps the brain stay calm.
And calm minds process language more naturally.
Right. Let me tell you one more story. I once had a student who felt frustrated because she still translated sometimes.
Even after studying for a long time?
Yes. She said, I still translate in my head. I think I will never be fluent.
That sounds like something a lot of people feel.
Definitely. But then I asked her a question. I said, do you translate every single word?
And what did she say?
She thought for a moment and said, no, actually I only translate difficult words.
Which means she was already making progress.
Exactly. She was focusing so much on what she still couldn't do that she completely ignored how far she had already come.
That is such an important lesson.
It really is. Because when you only focus on your weaknesses, you forget to notice your strengths.
And that can make you feel stuck even when you are improving.
Exactly. So if you are watching this right now, do not ask yourself, do I still translate sometimes?
Ask yourself, am I translating less than before?
Exactly. Because progress is not about becoming perfect overnight.
It's about needing translation less and less over time.
Right. Maybe 1 year ago you translated every sentence.
But now you only translate difficult words.
That's progress.
Maybe 1 year ago you needed subtitles in your own language.
But now you can watch with English subtitles.
That's progress too.
Exactly. Maybe 1 year ago you could not think in English at all.
But now simple English sentences appear in your mind naturally.
That's huge progress.
I think people need to celebrate those small wins more often.
Absolutely. Because small wins build motivation.
And motivation helps you keep going.
Exactly. And in the next part, we are going to bring everything together.
We are going to talk about what real fluency actually feels like.
And the answer may be very different from what most people imagine.
A lot of people imagine fluency as this perfect moment where you suddenly understand every word, speak without mistakes, and never feel confused again.
But real fluency is not like that at all.
Not even close. Real fluency is much more human than that.
What does it actually feel like?
It feels relaxed. That is the best word for it.
Relaxed?
Yes, real fluency means you are no longer fighting with every sentence in your head. You are not translating every word. You are not checking every grammar rule before you speak.
You are just communicating.
Exactly. Sometimes you speak perfectly. Sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes you forget a word and explain it another way.
But the important thing is that you keep going.
Right. That is what fluent people do. They keep going.
I think that is such an important message because so many people think fluency means perfection. But perfection is impossible. Even native speakers are not perfect. They forget words, make grammar mistakes, and repeat themselves too. Exactly, but they do not stop speaking because of it. And maybe that is the real difference. It is. Fluent people are comfortable being imperfect. That is powerful. It really is, because when you stop chasing perfection, you create space for real communication. And that is where confidence grows. Exactly. Confidence does not come from speaking perfectly. It comes from surviving conversations, expressing your ideas, and realizing that people still understand you. Even when your English is not perfect. Right. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a conversation in English where you made mistakes, but the other person still understood you? I think most people have. Exactly. And those moments matter because they prove something important. What is it? They prove that communication is bigger than grammar. Wow. Think about it. If you say, yesterday I go to store, people still understand you. The grammar is not perfect, but the meaning is clear. Exactly. That does not mean grammar is unimportant. Of course grammar matters. But communication comes first. Right.
And when you focus too much on grammar during a conversation, you often lose the conversation itself.
Because you're too busy trying to sound perfect.
Exactly. Real fluency is not about speaking like a textbook. It's about connecting with people.
That is such a beautiful way to say it.
And here's something else. Real fluency often feels much quieter than people expect.
Quieter?
Yes. Many learners expect some dramatic moment where they suddenly become fluent overnight.
Like waking up one morning and magically speaking English perfectly?
Exactly. But in reality, fluency usually arrives very quietly.
How?
One day you noticed you understood a movie scene without subtitles.
Or you answer someone in English without planning first.
Right. Or you read a message in English and understand it instantly.
Or you think, I'm tired, without translating it.
Exactly. Those small moments are fluency growing.
And they happen little by little.
Right. That is why it is so important to notice your progress.
Because if you only focus on what you still cannot do, you will always feel stuck.
Exactly. But if you look back and see how far you have come, you realize something amazing.
You realize that your brain is changing.
Right. You realize that English is becoming more natural, more familiar, more automatic.
And that is exciting.
It really is, because it means every video you watch, every sentence you read, every conversation you have, and every little moment of practice is helping.
Even when it feels slow.
Especially when it feels slow, because language learning is like planting a tree.
You don't see it grow every day.
Exactly, but if you keep watering it, one day you look back and realize it is much bigger than before.
That is such a great example.
So if you are watching this right now and you still translate sometimes, that's okay.
If you still feel slow sometimes, that's okay too.
Exactly. What matters is that you keep going.
Because every time you listen to English, your brain is learning.
Every time you speak English, your confidence is growing.
Every time you think in English, even for a few seconds, you are building a new habit. And those habits can completely change the way you experience the language. One day, you may suddenly realize that English no longer feels foreign. It just feels normal. And that is such an incredible feeling. It really is. So remember this. You do not need to stop translating completely tomorrow. You just need to translate a little less than yesterday. Exactly. One less word, one less sentence, one more moment of direct understanding. Because fluency is not built in giant steps. It is built in tiny moments, repeated again and again. And if you keep practicing, those tiny moments will eventually become your new normal. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you subscribe to Talk Easy Daily, because we create episodes that help you understand English in a more natural and confident way. And comment below with one English phrase you understand instantly without translating. We would love to read your answers. And maybe your answer will inspire someone else who is still struggling. Exactly. Share this episode with a friend who feels stuck in English, and remind them that fluency is not about being perfect. It's about being brave enough to keep going. And we will see you in the next episode of Talk Easy Daily.